Vladimir Putin stated today that the sanctions imposed yesterday by Donald Trump against the oil and gas sector of the Russian Federation will not affect the Russian economy in any way. But at the same time, for some reason, the special representative of the Russian president, Kirill Dmitriev, urgently flew to Washington for negotiations with the aim of asking to ease the sanctions pressure. The visit was not publicly announced, but it is already known that Dmitriev will meet with Steve Witkoff. And according to sources, Dmitriev is asking the Trump administration to back off a little on the issue of sanctions, which, as you recall, don't bother Russia at all. And it's important to note here that for the first time since Donald Trump's inauguration in January, the United States administration has imposed significant sanctions against Russia because of Russia's war against Ukraine. And it seems that Putin has really gone too far because, according to sources, Trump has decided to strengthen the sanctions against Russia. After the kindergarten strike in Kharkiv, this shelling became a turning point for him, which made him decide to take tougher action against Putin. But that's not all. Amid the introduction of new sanctions against Russia, Trump is already officially heading to meet with Chinese leader Xi Jinping, and China has already sharply reduced its purchase of Russian oil. Yes, even China. My name is Alexei Pechi. Today is October 24th. Let's discuss this topic together. Before we begin, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, please leave any comment under this episode, and subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechi News. That's what it's called. The link is in the description of this video, and there we publish breaking news as it comes in. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel financially, you can do so with any donation or a paid subscription through YouTube sponsorship. All the links and details on how to do this are in the description of this video. It says right there, support the Alexei Pechi channel. Choose the format that's convenient for you. I appreciate any support. Thank you. So, the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin believes that the new United States sanctions supposedly will not have a significant impact on the Russian economy. Well, at least that's what he said. Here's his quote. Yes, the sanctions are serious for us, of course, that's clear, and they will have certain consequences, but overall they will not have a significant effect, especially on our economic well-being. United States sanctions will negatively affect Russian-American relations. It was an unfriendly act and an attempt to put pressure on Russia. But no self-respecting country and no self-respecting people ever make decisions under pressure like that. By the way, Donald Trump has already responded ironically to this statement by Putin. Trump stated that in 6 months it will be possible to see whether those very United States sanctions will have an effect on Russia. When asked by a journalist whether Vladimir Putin is mistaken in claiming that Russia is not subject to United States sanctions and that this will not have any serious impact on the Russian economy, Trump replied, quote, "I'm glad he thinks so. That's good. I'll let you know about it in 6 months. We'll see how things turn out." Well, it's funny that Putin, for example, says that this will not affect the economic well-being of Russians in any way. But let me remind you, starting from January 1st, they're actually raising taxes, significantly raising them. But of course, Putin also made some ridiculous attempts to threaten with some incredible responses to Tomahawk strikes on Russia. And Putin also stated that it wasn't the Americans who cancelled the meeting with Trump in Budapest, it's just that without preparation, the two presidents couldn't meet in any way. That's how it was always planned. You just didn't get it. Maybe Trump was wrong to claim he cancelled the meeting. The rhetoric is that sanctions are pointless and Russia isn't afraid. And maybe, with a big stretch, hypothetically, you could believe that if it weren't for one thing. The United States imposed sanctions only yesterday on the night of October 23rd. Today, October 24th, Russian presidential envoy Kirill Dmitriev, who took part in this year's top Russian-American talks, urgently arrived in Washington and is now waiting outside Witkoff's office for a meeting. And a little later, it turned out that they actually told him, "Listen, Dmitriev, you're not in Washington, you're in Miami." He quickly rushed to Miami because the meeting will be here. Dmitriev's United States visit wasn't publicly announced, and it's obvious why. It's kind of strange. Putin loudly claims sanctions are meaningless, yet it's embarrassing to admit his own envoy went to Washington to plead for less sanctions pressure. Well, at the very least, it's strange. News about Dmitriev's trip, who often praised the policies of Donald Trump's administration on social media, including on issues that have nothing to do with Russia, came out just a day after the United States administration, for the first time since Trump's inauguration, imposed significant sanctions against Russia. in connection with the war against Ukraine. Dmitriev plans official talks with United States officials and has a meeting set with Trump's representative, Steve Witkoff. They will concern the relations between the United States and Russia. That is the official wording. And here I will make a small digression. The thing is, besides the sanctions, another headache has appeared for Putin. It's the Tomahawk missiles. Yes, I can already hear your skepticism, but don't jump to conclusions just yet. I'll explain everything now. Volodymyr Zelensky stated today that Ukraine can still receive long-range Tomahawk missiles. Zelensky noted that the main results of his meeting with United States President Donald Trump last week. These are the new sanctions on Russian energy and the delayed meeting in Budapest between the United States leader and Russian dictator without Ukraine. And then a quote from Zelensky, "We don't have Tomahawks yet. We'll see. Every day brings something new. I don't know. Maybe tomorrow we'll already have Tomahawks." And right after that, Putin decided to respond and started shouting that he would definitely retaliate if Tomahawks strike Russia. Quote, "If such weapons are used to strike Russian territory, the response will be very serious, if not overwhelming." Let them think about that. But let's get back to the sanctions. Earlier this week, the United States imposed sanctions on Russian oil companies Rosneft and Lukoil, and President Trump announced the cancellation of his meeting with Vladimir Putin in Budapest. And so Russian representatives, including Putin himself, on the one hand criticized these decisions, but on the other hand stated that the meeting could still take place in the future and that dialogue with the United States should continue. Well, overall, Russians are clearly frightened, and Putin, when commenting on the sanctions, was rather mild. So what do you think? Could it be that Putin refused to negotiate with the United States of America? If you impose those sanctions, there won't be negotiations. No, Putin, like a boy, just responded with quotes, "We support the continuation of dialogue." You know, that kind of answer reminded me of the Europeans' response about a year ago when they said they were concerned and ready for dialogue and so on. Now we see a mirrored situation. Okay, maybe Putin threatened some kind of response to the United States of America over the sanctions. You impose sanctions, we'll retaliate, but that's not happening. Putin gave such a lengthy lecture about how the United States hurt itself, saying that now, without Russian oil, gas prices in the United States will skyrocket. But honestly, Putin didn't explain how that's connected. Putin said several times that although the sanctions do cause harm, they don't inflict significant damage. He also repeated that the United States will face gasoline price issues. Well, we can actually see who really has problems with gasoline. But that's not even the main point here. Putin knows sanctions are painful. He fully understands this. Why? The thing is, Chinese state oil giants have suspended purchases of Russian oil today because of new United States sanctions against Russia. The Chinese, well, basically just don't want to take risks because of the Russians. We're talking about the companies PetroChina, Sinopec, China National Offshore Oil Corporation, and Jinhua Oil. Well, at least in the short term, all these companies will refrain from buying Russian oil delivered by sea. Well, what happens next? Let me remind you, on October 30, Trump will officially meet with the Chinese leader Xi Jinping to address the issue of China's support for Russia in the war against Ukraine. In addition, India is almost completely stopping its purchases of Russian oil, also because of sanctions from the United States of America. Russian oil exports to India will soon reach zero, after the United States imposed sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil, according to Bloomberg sources in Indian oil refining companies. Top managers of major refiners reportedly said sanctions will make it nearly impossible to settle accounts with Russian suppliers. Therefore, all operations with these companies must be stopped by November 21. I'll tell you more about this on November 21 and why exactly until that date. To put it briefly, it's Donald Trump's deadline. For your understanding, Russia has been the main oil supplier for India for the past 3 years and provided almost 40% of its imports. And now, Indian refineries will be forced to urgently return to purchasing from Middle Eastern countries. In general, the sanctions are so insignificant that Putin's envoy, Dmitriev, as you understand, flew to Washington to beg for some concessions. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.